What is good, everybody? Welcome to Stats and Cohn and the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He's Grant Cohn. Grant, it's Wednesday. The Niners have won 14 straight games. Life is pretty good in San Francisco right now.
Well, I don't know about San Francisco, but it's definitely good in Santa Clara, where they have Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out Burger and the 49ers in Great America. Like, it's all coming together for them now. They got it all.
You are there. Obviously, huge game this week. Does it feel different in San Francisco, like just because it's Cowboys week right now?
Oh, I haven't gone yet. It'll be this afternoon. I haven't been there yet. I'll let you know. Let me get back to you on that one. But I expect it will feel different because it's Cowboys week. Yes, I feel like the schedule starts today. You know what I mean?
It's interesting because the Cowboys have done nothing but hand out flowers talking about the 49ers. Jerry Jones called this a measuring stick game. He said a win would be inspirational. He literally said, we're measuring ourselves against the 49ers. It's interesting. Like, the Cowboys, clearly they're up for it. They have said, Mike McCarthy has said, this is not just a regular season game, all that stuff. Do you think the 49ers, that it means more to the 49ers as well, or you think that's just coming from the Cowboys end?
I think this game means more to the Cowboys than it means to the Niners, right? Because the Cowboys haven't been able to beat the Niners. And if the Niners lose this game, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're worse than the Cowboys. But the Cowboys, if they lose this game, like, they're going to tell themselves, we can't beat this team. Can't beat the Niners. Our only chance to get to the Super Bowl is if we miss them at some point or someone else knocks them off. So it's a huge game for them. And I think it's interesting knowing, like, this Niners team has a distinct personality. Kittle, Juszczyk, been here 7 years. They've been, like, on the doorstep. They want their credit. They want their flowers. They've sort of accepted their flowers a little prematurely sometimes. And they have big, big egos. No disrespect. So I think the best thing to do when you play the Niners, who are really good, is don't say that they're not as good as they think they are. Say that they're better than they think they are. You know what I mean? Really, really play into their egos. And the Niners would be like, yeah. I don't know.
Albert, watching on YouTube, says this game is the Super Bowl for Dallas. It probably is, because we know they ain't getting to the NFC Championship game, so this is as close as they're getting. I'm fascinated this week because of Brock. Brock's playing the Cowboys again. It was his worst game as a pro against the Cowboys last year in the playoffs. Dan Quinn, I think, really has a better bead on Kyle Shanahan than other defensive coordinators around the league, whether it's because he worked with them, whatever the case may be. They scored 19 last year in the playoffs. They scored 23, I believe, the year before in the playoffs. Niners are putting up 30 plus on everybody else. So I'm fascinated to see what Brock learns and how he looks playing the Cowboys for a second time.
Cowboys are unique on defense because, A, they have, like, the best pass rush, or one of the best pass rushes. So you don't have much time. And unlike the rest of the league, which is playing sort of soft, two deep safety coverage, sort of encouraging the check down, the Vic Fangio defense,
Yep.
The Cowboys play a lot of aggressive middle of field closed, cover one, cover three type stuff. The league has sort of trended away from there because the whole thing is, don't give up explosive plays, force the check down. Well, if you do that against the 49ers, Brock Purdy will beat you. I mean, he's proven it, like, time and time again. He's not really trying to go down the field that much. He'll take the short throw to Christian McCaffrey over and over and over again and kill you. So, I mean, like, if that's the trend of the league right now, the two deep stuff, the soft two deep stuff, Brock is just perfect to destroy that stuff. Once you get a defense with a real pass rush that's actually playing aggressive and trying to take away the middle of the field and force you to go outside the numbers deep, I mean, that's the best way to defend Brock. Doesn't mean it'll work, but it was somewhat successful last time, 19 points when they faced each other.
I think Ayuk is going to be huge in this game because he's somebody that can win one-on-one on the outside. Obviously, the injury to Diggs is massive. It changes a lot of what the Cowboys want to do on defense. But we're still learning about Brock Purdy, and I'm fascinated to see what he looks like in this. Now he knows what to expect. He seems to have picked up right where he left off last year. I mean, it's pretty damn impressive. Literally one incompletion last week. For years, we talked about how the Niners roster is so stacked and they have the advantage everywhere except quarterback. I'll just ask you right now, Grant, the best quarterback on the field at Levi's on Sunday is?
Probably Brock. Probably, I'm down on Dak. I feel like his best days are behind him since he broke his leg and got all that money. I feel like he's real tentative and safety first on the field and doesn't move that well anymore and commits a lot of mistakes. Brock Purdy doesn't. I mean, Brock Purdy has limitations, but he seems much more confident, much more courageous on the field than Dak at this point. So I'll take Brock. I mean, I think what's really interesting is that defenses have all sort of decided that Vic Fangio has the right approach. You should be playing two deep safeties and forcing the check down. It's like, because offenses will make the mistake eventually. How many quarterbacks can execute long drives consistently? Well, Brock's one of them.
Yeah.
He is one of them. So stop daring him to beat you that way. I feel like what happens is these teams don't really do game plan specific stuff until the playoffs. They're like, okay, well, these are our defensive principles. We're not going to change them for one game. Like, well, you better against the Niners. Otherwise, Brock will, dink and dunk you to death, to use a pejorative. Like, they're effective if you're checking down to Christian McCaffrey and the defense is playing way back. Like, that's effective. You need to really challenge Brock. And I think the Cowboys are like the only team that has, and they're going to.
Oh, well, I mean, the right side of that offensive line is begging for Micah Parsons to just terrorize them. I would not want to be Colton McKivitz this week.
You remember what he did to Mike McGlinchey in the playoffs last year? He was airborne, parallel to the ground.
I've never seen that. And Mike McGlinchey is like 6'9", too. Mike McGlinchey is not a small human being, and Micah Parsons just absolutely annihilated him. How about this? CubeZB says, my girlfriend for 11 years is a ragingly passionate Cowboys fan. We can't watch our games together. Breaks my heart to see her cry. This game could end relationships.
I don't think it breaks his heart, though, because he had like the crying, laughing emojis. It was like a ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, you got to watch it.
I would hope. I think you guys are going to be okay.
If it's lasted 11 years and you've beaten the Cowboys, you've ended the Cowboys season 2 straight. I think you can get through it and figure it out.
I think so.
I wonder if you'll indulge me in a little bit of an exercise when looking at this game. We already talked about the quarterback. You said it was Purdy. The best running back on the field in this game is
McCaffrey.
The best receiver on the field right now in this game.
Ayuk. I'll take Ayuk over CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee Lamb is damn good.
Yes, I think career-wise, obviously, I would give Lamb the leg up. But right now, in this moment, I think it's Ayuk. And that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah. You know what Purdy's passer rating is when he's targeting Ayuk this year?
Oh, it's perfect. Has he caught like every target?
17 of 20. Crazy, man.
Ayuk has played in 3 games. He set his career high in receiving twice so far this year.
Guy is not messing around. And can I just point out, like, this is a real thing and it's human nature, but like Kittle and Debo have gotten paid already. So I'm not saying they're complacent, but there's no way that they can muster up the hunger and the anger that Brandon Ayuk has naturally right now. And maybe Ayuk will never have it again, but this is a special time in an athlete's career. Like, this is it. This is the moment for Brandon Ayuk. And he's just getting started. Like, he's going to keep doing this. It's going to be cool to watch this year.
Do you really think of what we can't really link it to? Maybe if you work on commission, I guess it's a little different, but like in regular jobs, your day-to-day performance, millions of dollars we're talking about for Ayuk. Every game, there's millions of dollars at stake, whether he can perform, because he's going to, hopefully hit the free agent market. Like, that kind of pressure and urgency, you're right. It's different for Ayuk than it is for Debo. It's different than Kittle. It just is. Yeah. There's no way around it. And he's crushing it right now. And especially, he's got to feel frustrated. He's got to feel like he was held back. Like, hey, I was always capable of this, but Kyle put me in the doghouse. We've had quarterbacks that could not get me the ball consistently. Finally, now this is my chance, and he's making the most of it.
And it's like Debo and Kittle have already had their come up. Debo had that incredible 2021 season. Kittle had the incredible back-to-back 2018, 2019 seasons. They grinded. They did what they had to do. They have generational wealth. So anything they do on top of that is gravy. Like, Ayuk knows that this is the year. Like, all he has to do is grind and be focused and do his best. And in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, he's going to get generational wealth. And maybe he'll keep playing the same way after that. But if anyone's ever had like a come up, that during that time, you probably had a focus that you've never had for that thing ever. And once you make it, maybe it's harder to keep that focus because, whatever. But right now, if our human nature as a coach, just knowing what Ayuk has in front of him, man, call that man's number. Call that man's number. You could trust him.
It is not just as a receiver. Look at his blocking this year too. Like, it's every aspect of football right now. And you're right. Take advantage of it.
Full effort every day. You watch Deebo Samuel. Like JT O'Sullivan points this out all the time. His show is so good. Can't recommend it enough. JTO, but everyone's watching that now. It's taking off. But he mostly looks at quarterbacks. And while he's looking at quarterbacks, he's like, can we just talk about Deebo for a second? You tell me. He won't even, he's so diplomatic. You tell me, is he running as hard as he can? Like when he's not getting the ball, a lot of times he's like kind of 75% it through routes. And you don't see that from Brandon Ayuk.
Deebo doesn't get put in the doghouse for that, though. Ayuk did, but Deebo didn't get put in.
So weird. Deebo can do no wrong. Ayuk, like Deebo is like King David. You know what I mean? King David did all kind of foul stuff, and God's like, you're still my favorite. Moses like delivered the Jews from Egypt and like got mad at God one time when he was old, and like God was like, what'd you say? Excuse me? Oh, you don't get to go to the promised land.
You're going biblical on us on the program. Biblical. I love it.
Have to.
Watching on YouTube says, does Brock Purdy avoiding an interception give him more credibility? That's going to be huge on Sunday. The Cowboys defense is built on forcing turnovers. They've led the league in turnovers the past 2 seasons, which nobody had done since the Steelers in the 70s. If you don't turn the ball over against the Cowboys, you can move the ball on them.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how people decide the best way to defend Brock Purdy is. Like, he's so good at scrambling. It's a tough one. Like, I almost feel like what teams used to do to Drew Brees is they'd rush 3 and drop 8 into coverage and just sort of like put 5 underneath. Like, you can't throw short, dude. I'm not letting you throw 5 underneath, 3 deep. What are you going to do? I'd be interesting to see teams do that to Purdy. Like, eventually you got to sort of take away his strengths. You know he's deadly short and intermediate. He's freaking deadly short and intermediate. You got to sort of test that arm and see if he can get the ball to the sideline and down the field. And he probably will a few times, and you're going to lose anyway.
Trey, watching on YouTube, says, Grant, please ask Kyle if the Trey Lance trade to Dallas could hurt them in this matchup with all the knowledge Trey has to give the Dallas defense. Brian Schottenheimer was talking about that after the game last week for the Cowboys. If you watched my 49ers in 5 episode today, you saw the comment from him. He kind of laughed and said, like, yeah, Trey knows a little, but like Kyle Shanahan was on Dan Quinn's staff. Like, they don't need Trey Lance to get intel on Kyle Shanahan. So I think that's a little overblown.
Can you imagine if I asked this question today, what Kyle's answer would be? Hey, Kyle, you concerned that Trey Lance has like sort of given up all your secrets? How much can Trey Lance ruin your game? He would just look at me like, yeah, I don't know. He'd give a really snarky response. Trey Niners, I respect you, man, but I feel like I'm not going to ask this question because it would.
You should.
It wouldn't go well for me.
You should ask it, because what if Kyle's like, he couldn't learn the system when he was here, so I'm not too worried about it. Like, what if he throws out something like that? I'm just saying.
All right, let me think about it. Yeah.
Because you're right. I feel like he would get snarky because, like, I'm sure he feels like you think someone's got the secrets on me. I mean, and that's the other thing too. Like, teams spend all week, every week, studying Kyle Shanahan's system. All the games are on tape. It's all public stuff. But yeah, Trey Lance is going to provide some sort of secret that other teams can't discover.
No.
And by the way, the Niners signed Anthony Brown, who's been with the Cowboys forever. So that could go both ways.
Point. It could. And also, Dan Quinn's been doing really well without Trey Lance, game planner for Kyle Shanahan since they split up. 2019 when he was in Atlanta, last 2 years with Dallas. Like, he's done a really good job.
Yeah, like we said, he knows his stuff. Flavor Reborn Restorations, YouTube channel member. Grant, YouTube channel member. By the way, if you would like to be a YouTube channel member for me on the Gold Standard, it's less than $3 a month to get custom emojis, membership badges, priority comment response. Please consider. And if you want to follow from me on Twitter, I will happily give one to you. Vish always makes me include that in the thing. So there you go. The question, did you two watch JT O'Sullivan's breakdown? Yes, we did. Brock's one incompletion was a busted play by Kyle. I remember watching that live, Grant. That's the play where McCaffrey motions out to the left, and then he's just like 5 yards deep in the slot. And then he tries to run like a quick out, and the Niners get blitzed, and Grant just basically Brock just dirts it. Weird
Yeah.
play.
That was a terrible call. And it was like 3rd and 24, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So his one incomplete pass was on 3rd and 24. Good
He
game.
threw, it was 3rd and 24, and then Kyle called a timeout to avoid a delay of game, which I was pissed about. Like, what, dude, what are you worried? 3rd and 24, 3rd and 29. Like, you're worried about the 5 yard. You're not getting it. Save the timeout. But anyway, it didn't matter. But
and it's like he was this close, to having a second touchdown pass, but he was just like slightly backwards. So it counted as a run.
Yeah.
Brock. Yeah. Could have been more. Oh, well.
The JT O'Sullivan breakdowns are fascinating.
They're so good. Can we talk about all the things we like about him, like a free advertising for JTO? Like, first of all, they're extremely insightful. So you learn not only about what the quarterback does well and doesn't do well, but you learn about offenses. He diagrams the plays. He tries to explain the progressions. And then he takes it to the next level where he talks about whether he likes the design of the play, whether it makes sense, his preferences. And then he asks you what you think. Like, it is everything I would want to do if I were qualified to do the stuff he's doing. The fact that he's doing it that well, I think kind of is like going to shut everyone down. Like, man, I'm not going to touch this Brock Purdy film. Like, I'm just going to watch JTO and learn with the rest of you guys. He's that good.
There's
Shout
a
out
lot
to
of
JT.
A lot of these comments in the chat. JT O'Sullivan was a bust. He was a bum. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's talking about. There's a difference between understanding concepts and offenses and how that works and being able to physically execute it on the field. Yeah, he was not a very good quarterback, but he still knows offenses and how to do it. Like, I hate them. People just ignore that stuff. Like, oh, he can't possibly have anything good to say because he wasn't a Hall of Famer.
He's the best at this. He may not have been the best NFL quarterback, but when it comes to breaking down the coach's tape of all the quarterbacks every week, who's doing it better than JT O'Sullivan? No one else is even committed to doing it. Like, this dude is really grinding. And just because he didn't necessarily play at the highest level in the NFL, you can watch his analysis for yourself and judge how good it is. And like, there are other guys who dabble. Kurt Warner will do it here and there.
Yep.
Hall of Fame quarterback, way better than JT O'Sullivan. But when you watch Kurt Warner's analysis, it's excellent, but it's much less candid. It's much more positive. This guy's good. That guy's good. I want to be diplomatic. And that's great. But you got to appreciate someone like JT O'Sullivan who is not doing that and is much more honest and entertaining.
Astro says Kyle Shanahan was a bust at wide receiver. That's right. Does Kyle not know offense? Does he not know how to break stuff down? I don't know if he was a bust. I mean, his leg was literally impaled on an iron fence. So that, tends to damage your football. Did you not hear that story?
I remember that story. I forgot about that.
Yeah. A little nasty, grisly injury.
I forgot that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely really weird. But no, the JT O'Sullivan video breakdowns are great. And the one thing that they have taught me about Brock, and I think this is the area where, we talk about like, how can Brock improve? There are still times where he's misreading certain plays and not seeing certain things or just hesitant to throw the ball. Now, the good news for the 49ers is most of the time he checks it down to Christian McCaffrey, who still gains, 10 yards, 8 yards, whatever it is. But there is room for him to improve to where he can get even better than what we've seen.
And it seems like what JT O'Sullivan is focused on with Brock and impressed about with Brock is his footwork. He's always mentioning like, look, the guy schemed open. It's not a long throw, but just watch his feet. They're perfect. He's in the perfect throwing position all the time. No wasted motion. And that's why someone with limited arm strength can have enough zip to make most of 95% of the throws required in this offense. But when it's time to throw deep, JT O'Sullivan also points out, like, look at how he clicks his feet. That's a new concept that I never thought about, but like clicking, the whole idea is you have your base set up. And once you bring your feet together, now you have to find it again and you're going to lose it. So you want to sort of keep your feet in your throwing position. And he almost like crow hops into his deep throws because obviously he's trying to, get his whole body into it. And he doesn't have that much arm strength. He's going to get the whole thing. So in the effort to really get some mustard on his throws, it seems like he compromises a little bit of accuracy. Not all the time. But sometimes, and JT O'Sullivan points it out, it's always nice to know like why things are happening. Like, I would love to see someone put together a video of Nick Bosa's rushes from a game. Be like, look, I know he's only had 2 sacks in the last 9 games. It's very un-Nick Bosa. Let's look and see what he's doing. Like, is anything like is he different? Are offenses blocking him differently? Or is nothing different happening and he's just like a tick away from getting these sacks and it's going to happen next week? Like, if someone would do that video, man, that would get 100,000 views. Just saying.
Intelligent
Throwing it
AJ
out there.
says Johnny Dell Football does a great job as well. Can we talk about
for
the Bosa
sure.
thing? Because I've heard people say that, like, oh, well, he's really close and the sacks will come. It's like, that's not really how it works. You either get there or you don't get there. And I'm not saying he doesn't have an impact on the game, because he does. And I'm
He
not saying he's
does
been really good this year, because he
because
has.
he is.
But he's not getting sacks. And
And this was going back to last year too.
you have to eventually get there. Quarterbacks can still complete passes under pressure, as we have seen, because the 49ers are pressuring the hell out of people. You have to get sacks. You have to sacks kill drives. Sacks kill scoring opportunities. And just because he's been close doesn't mean he's going to get them, and he needs to get them.
I mean, the Niners didn't make him the highest paid non-quarterback ever because he's generating pressure.
Right.
Because he sets the edge. It's because he was getting like a sack a game for years. And now it's been 2 sacks in the last 9 games, going back to the regular season last year. It's like, what? What is going on? You've never had a drought like this, ever. So I'd like to know the answer. I mean, maybe it's a fluke, or maybe something changed. Maybe the league has a better plan for Bosa now, or maybe he's not quite what he was before. I want to know. I guess we all got to look at the tape and decide for ourselves, but it'd be nice to have someone who like really, 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 really knew to look at it.
Clarsard 49 says Bosa's having a Debo 2022 season.
But it went back to last year too. I'm telling you, he had no sacks in the playoffs last year. Like, what's up? What's up?
Again, sacks are not everything.
It's not everything.
But they're not.
But for Bosa, they came so easily for so long, so consistently.
You're
now,
not.
His only sack this year was a play that he literally wasn't blocked. Like, what? What? It's been a quarter of the year.
And maybe like there'll be a little extra juice from him this week because Parsons is on the other side and he won the Defensive Player of the Year. And it feels like this year that Parsons is going to win the award. Like everybody's like, okay, you didn't get it last year, but you were really good, so we'll give it to you this year. So it'd be nice to see Bosa step it up a little bit in prime time.
Yeah, it sure would. I mean, talking about all this pressure that the Niners defensive line is generating, man, Josh Dobbs kind of diced him up. I mean, they only scored 16 points, but like he completed 70% of his throws. He threw 2 touchdowns, no picks, 200-something yard. Like he's just Josh Dobbs. Like was 5th or 6th career start, and he did just fine against a supposedly elite defense.
So
he would have done worse with some sacks.
I go back and forth on that. Because, yeah, I've said the same thing about the defense. Like, you gave up a 99-yard drive for a touchdown. They had multiple drives, I think 3 or 4 in a row that were 10-plus plays. But, like you said, at the end of the day, they only gave up 16 points, which is really, really good. The most points the Niners defense has given up in a game this year is 23, which is incredible. But it does feel different. And maybe that's just my issue that I have to just get over. But it doesn't feel like the defense is at the level that it has been in recent years.
Well, the pass rush definitely isn't. I mean, in terms of sack rate, which is like sacks per dropback, they're 28th. 28th! After all they've spent on that position, like, it should be better. Now they're still overall an elite defense, but at the same time, they haven't faced a good team yet. And there's only a couple good teams in the NFC anyway. So we'll see. Like, these are issues that are only going to crop up here and there. And all it takes is them to crop up in the at the wrong time in a playoff game, and that's that. So they got to take this stuff seriously.
To be fair, Javon Hargrave has been fantastic. Like you mentioned, the amount of money that they spend, he's been doing just damn fine.
He certainly has. What, 3 sacks in 4 games? Yeah,
he's got as many sacks as 49ers defensive tackles did all of last year, and that's all of them.
He's been the one. Like like Drake Jackson had those sacks in week 1, but they were kind of like,
right place, right time.
Right place, right time. Yes. And he hasn't had much of anything since then. Armstead, Kinlaw, pressure, no sacks. Bosa, pressure, no sacks. Hargrave producing. And again, maybe if we watch the all 22, we're going to see that Bosa's drawing so much attention that Hargrave's getting one-on-ones and making people pay. Like, that's the most likely explanation for what's going on.
Trey Niners says, have you noticed Kyle has been more aggressive with his game management than in years past? I have. He's trusted Brock and Christian McCaffrey to get whatever yardage is needed. He's actually gone to Kittle a couple of times on 4th down, which has been great. I love it, Kyle. Keep doing it. And by the way, They did it against Arizona. They got a touchdown on that drive. And for part of that game, I was like, damn, if they had punted or kicked a field goal on that drive, this is a totally different game. Like, it helps you. Please keep it up, Kyle Shanahan, because that was a huge weakness in his game management. And it seems like this year, at least, he's a little more willing to roll the dice.
Well, I think you got to remember, like, how quickly Kyle Shanahan lost trust in Jimmy Garoppolo and how quickly he soured on him. Like, had that great run in 2017, came back in 2018, supposedly learning the offense, went 1-2, and it was bad. Got hurt. Then came back in 2019. He had that practice where he threw 5 picks in a row, played terribly in the preseason. And I think Kyle panicked. I mean, not panicked, but I think he saw Jimmy for what he is and said, this is not a good quarterback. I have to now make this team all about defense and the run game. And that 2019 team was all about avoiding Jimmy Garoppolo as much as possible, especially when the playoffs started. Hiding Jimmy. And that's what Kyle's been doing for years. It's why they tried to, it's why they traded for Trey Lance. He didn't want to hide his quarterback anymore. So finally, as a quarterback, he feels he doesn't have to hide. And he has a running back who he probably feels is every bit as good as any running back. So he should feel confident. He doesn't have to win that way anymore. Like, he can win with his offense now. And if he knows that. It's good to see him embrace it. He's an offensive coach.
He's talked about, he always mentions this as like a point of pride. He thinks it's like such a big deal about how, when he was an offensive coordinator, all he wanted to do was score points all the time. And that's always his only concern. But when you're a head coach and you grow and you
complimentary football,
you realize that you call plays to win games, not to score.
You realize that Jimmy Garoppolo is your quarterback and you better be careful.
Yeah. What he was saying, and he even said it, he's like, I realized that all we got to do is not screw this up or we're going to win this game. And I think that reflected in his play calling. And now I think it's
screw this up. When he said we not screw this up, that we is a euphemism for number 10.
I think he now realizes that it's the other way around. Like, our offense can score some points and we might have to score one more time to help protect the defense a little bit. And you know what? If he thinks that way, and based on what we've seen this year, I don't think he's totally wrong.
Have you looked at Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers this year?
Isn't he leading the league in interceptions?
It's 6 through 3 games. 6 through 3 games. And his quarterback rating is 81. Like, everything we thought we knew about Jimmy Garoppolo was true. And and he's tanking away from this team, this defense, this supporting cast, and this coach. So that's all I want to do is keep him. Like, I'm not saying you don't have to enjoy the Brock Purdy experience or you have to like be super skeptical when you're sitting with your friends and being like, look, I know he's super great right here, but no, no, you don't know. But just keep in mind that Jimmy put up like the same numbers as Brock in this offense last year. And now he's tanking. So I'll just stop talking there. That's it. That's all I have to say. So, damn, 2021. Whew.
20 of 21 broke Steve Young's record for single game completion percentage. Christian McCaffrey's breaking Jerry Rice's record. I mean,
I'm so glad JT O'Sullivan found time to make fun of that play, though. That was the one incomplete pass. It was like, look, you guys were pretty much dialed in on offense. There's not much I can say to make fun of you guys, but I got to balance this out. I got this. What is that formation? He just was.
I've never seen it.
Crouched there for 3 or 4 seconds. Silly.
You're trying to run a quick out, but because he's starting 5 yards in the backfield, it's not a quick out anymore. It's a deep out because he's got to run 10 yards to get to the damn marker.
That was very silly.
Yeah.
Is that who does the pass game for the Niners? Slowick's gone, right? It's one of the Kubiaks. Is it the Kubiak?
Yeah, it's one of the Kubiak. I can't really keep track of all the Kubiaks, but and then Forster does the
Clay. How many K names are there? Kevin.
Too many.
Yeah, a lot.
Is there anything else you want to get to about either what we've seen so far or about the Dallas game? Because if not, there is a certain topic that a lot of people are asking us to talk about in the chat, which I do want to.
Let's talk about the certain topic that people, because I don't even know.
Okay. So this comment is from Masters Afara, or other people have brought it up. Did you watch Richard Sherman's interview with Jimmy Ward? Jimmy let the cat out of the bag finally. Did you watch the interview on the Sherman podcast, first of all?
I watched the last 15 minutes where he talked about his final season with the Niners and how he ended up in Houston.
So it's fascinating. If you didn't see it, basically the Niners are going in the season, and Jimmy Ward, he gets hurt and he comes back, and they want him to play nickel, and he does not want to do that, which we knew. But apparently in the Buccaneers game, they asked him to play nickel corner, and Jimmy Ward said no. He said, I don't want to be at nickel corner when DeMeco Ryans asked him. And when Kyle Shanahan found out about it, he said, well, I guess we'll just have to put Azeez at corner, meaning Azeez Al-Shire. And Jimmy Ward's response was, yeah, I guess you will. Which is pretty good. Now,
Good
Jimmy
luck.
Ward forcing a fumble in that game, and so that it wasn't really a thing. But afterwards, he and Kyle Shanahan talked, and Kyle said, hey, you really kind of hurt me that you wouldn't go to nickel corner. And Jimmy Ward told him, like, you guys have been jerking me around with my position for years. I don't want to do it. I don't forget about that stuff. And Ward said from that point on in that season, they didn't talk anymore. There was no more communication between Jimmy Ward and Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, like wasn't there something Jimmy came in and said, like, I don't want to play, like, I only want to play safety. And Kyle's like, all right, so you don't want to start? Like, you don't want to start then? And Jimmy's like, okay, fine. Like, yeah, I don't want to. So I'll play special teams. Like, that's fine. And then Kyle's like, hey, why don't you just take the 48-hour rule, think about it. And I guess Jimmy swallowed his pride and played nickel. Then something like Kyle came up to him and wanted to talk about something. And Jimmy was like, hey, man, why don't you just take the 48-hour rule and leave me alone? And they never talked again. Isn't that what he said?
I didn't catch that last part, but to be fair, I haven't watched the whole interview.
He turned it on Kyle, I believe. Kyle wanted to come up and say to him something, and Jimmy's like, hey, why don't we just do that 48-hour rule? And then Kyle never came up to him again. They never spoke to each other again. And apparently what happened was Jimmy said, like, he felt bad that he went over DeMeco's head, but he also knew that DeMeco was going to say, it's not up to me, it's up to Kyle. And when he went to DeMeco afterward, and DeMeco said, hey, man, if I get a head coaching job, I'm bringing you on as a safety. So that's what he did.
And that's
so one man's stubbornness is another man's gain.
For a guy that gets a lot of love for how his relationship with players and all of that stuff, nobody bats 1,000, I guess. There's always going to be guys where you butt heads, but that's an interesting thing. And then the other interesting part of that, and keep in mind, by the way, that Tampa Bay game was week 11. There was a lot of the season left for them not to be communicating. But anyway, Jimmy Ward,
like, that team was the Texans. They were 3-13 last year. They were 4-13. They were 3-13-1 last year, 4-13 the year before that, and 4-12 before that. Now they're 2-2. DeMeco's doing pretty good. Jimmy Ward's doing pretty good. You got to give them credit. Like, what he's building over there seems like it might be something.
Cosmo says that looks worse on Ward. Just the Shanahan Ward interaction. Who do you think looks worse in that exchange?
Kyle. Like, you are the leader. You need to communicate. And you had this Cold War standoff with Jimmy Ward, who was totally in the right. It's like, you have been jerking him around for years. You have been moving him around, and he's been like the good soldier. And what did he get out of it? Not much. So not anymore. Not anymore. And what I noticed was when Jimmy Ward was telling his story, Richard Sherman was the one interviewing him, and he played for Kyle Shanahan for 2 years. And he didn't seem to disagree with Jimmy Ward. In fact, he seemed like he had a big grin on his face and was like, yeah, man, why don't you tell the world what Kyle Shanahan's really like, Jimmy Ward? It seems to me that Kyle Shanahan has his favorites on the team who he sort of caters to and makes sure that they like him. Juszczyk, Kittle, Trent, Bosa. But there's these second tier players who are somewhat replaceable or they feel overlooked. Azeez, Jimmy, and then they're gone. It's like Kyle makes it clear, like, look, man, we need you, but not that much, and we're not going to keep. Like, we might just have to replace you with someone cheaper, like Deshaun Gibson or Oren Burks. Like, sorry, it's the way it is. You're not part of the family, and I think those guys are the ones who feel a little like, okay, so there's like two classes of players on this team, and I don't know. Like, you see that.
The other part of it is they said, oh, look, Jimmy, we need you to play nickel because Ambry Thomas's ankle is a little messed up. And Jimmy Ward is like, wait a minute, my hand is broken.
He said, no, you need to play corner because Ambry Thomas is, I don't know if he meant nickel or he made it sound like they wanted him to play outside, which he did when he was younger. I don't know. I have to ask him.
And he was like, I got a broken hand. I'm out here with a busted hand, and Ambry Thomas has got a little ankle and he can't go. And it makes me wonder if maybe the Niners they knew then with Ambry Thomas, he ain't it. This guy ain't it.
Well,
because he's been struggling this year too.
the Niners want to make themselves seem like they're a pro player organization. Like they take care of their players. You know, they took care of Trey Lance when it was when the writing was on the wall. They did right by him. But it's like,
No, they
does
didn't.
Jimmy Ward agree with that? Does Richard Sherman agree with that? I mean, like once you're no longer super indispensable to the Niners, like they will jerk you around. Ask Jimmy Ward. I mean, Kyle Shanahan used to say stuff like, he's my favorite player in the team. Like, I want to give his jersey to my son, all that stuff. It's like, okay, but when you talk to Jimmy about your relationship, he feels unappreciated. Straight up. He was never in Cabo. He didn't make the cut. You don't think he noticed?
I'm sure he did. Jose Batista says they're trying to hide the fact that they spent a third-round pick on Ambry Thomas and he ain't living up to it. There's no hiding it anymore. Secret's out. Other teams know it. When Ambry Thomas is on the field, that's where we're going with the ball. But the other part of the Jimmy Ward thing is he said in so many, he didn't expressly say this, but basically his point was when Jimmy Garoppolo didn't suit up in the NFC Championship game, he thought that maybe it might have been because there was friction there between Shanahan and Garoppolo, because Ward said, it looked to me like Jimmy could have played, could have suited up. And we know through Tim Kawakami's reporting and others that it ended badly between the Niners and Jimmy Garoppolo, between Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo. And just when you consider everything that went down in that game, if Jimmy Garoppolo could have suited up in that game and didn't because of some friction between him and the organization or him and Kyle Shanahan, and they lost the game because they ran out of quarterbacks, that's bad.
Very bad. Essentially, Kyle Shanahan's, whatever you want to say, ego or inability to communicate or whatever, cost the Niners a Super Bowl last year or a Super Bowl appearance potentially. It's too bad. And I think what Jimmy Ward is saying is like, look, given how my relationship ended with Kyle Shanahan, it seems pretty likely that Jimmy Garoppolo's relationship with Kyle ended a similar way. And given how I felt, how borderline vindictive I felt, like, oh, you're shoving me off and you want me to make accommodations for you? Hey, screw you. That it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibilities for Jimmy Garoppolo to feel the same way. Like, hey, man, you're pushing me out of town. You're not going to give me an extension. You're going to make Brock the starting quarterback. You're replacing me with another quarterback, and you want me to suit up and be a backup just in case my replacement can't go. And now I could go on the field and get hurt and not be able to sign elsewhere next year and move on with my life. Hey, screw you. So I mean, I could see that. And I guess it's, it's a business, and Kyle doesn't necessarily have to have a great, super duper great relationship with every player and former player, but it's interesting. He has a reputation as keeping it real and being, players respect him. Does he always keep it real? I don't know.
GTC Real says this is why we had no shot in the NFC Championship game left with Josh Johnson. They treated Jimmy G bad in preseason, and he was lost for the year. He only played for his teammates once Trey won out. I mean, Jimmy got something out of that too. Nobody wanted Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Kyle came in, propped him up, and helped him get that contract with the Raiders. So let's not act like Jimmy, didn't get anything out of the arrangement.
Yeah, he didn't only play for his teammates. He also played for money and the opportunity to make more money. Like, he understood playing with the Niners was going to goose up his numbers and give him the best opportunity to make the most. And then he went to the Raiders and made a ton of money that he's never going to earn.
No chance at that.
So it worked out.
It's hideously bad.
Hey, give Kyle credit. I'm so critical of Kyle Shanahan. He was 100% right about Jimmy Garoppolo. 100% right.
Absolutely, he was.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty clear at this point. But it is interesting that the whole thing. I mean, remember, Tim Kawakami wrote that if the Niners had made the Super Bowl, there was no chance Jimmy Garoppolo was going to play in it, even if he was healthy. And if Brock Purdy wasn't, they were going to go to Phillip Rivers. They were going to go to Phillip freaking Rivers off the couch in the Super Bowl. So clearly things didn't end well with Jimmy there.
No, it's still bitter. I mean, the way you can know it's still bitter, it was at the owners' meetings in March. So this is what? Like months after their breakup. Someone asks Kyle Shanahan, like, hey, have you talked to Jimmy? And he was like, well, that would be impossible because he doesn't answer his phone. It's like, dude. Like, let it go. He's not even on your team anymore. But it's like, nope, I got to take one more dig. Screw this guy.
He did He did throw that in there.
And then Jimmy took a dig at Kyle, right? Like a month ago,
yes.
when the stuff was going down with Trey. Then freaking Jimmy rode in on his high horse and was like, yeah, I love Trey Lance. And I don't know what they're doing over there at quarterback. Right?
Yep.
I mean, man, those guys are going to be taking digs at each other for life. Like, you know who else does that kind of stuff? I feel like a deep hatred for life? Jed York and Jim Harbaugh. Both guys rooting for each other. Like, whenever something bad happens to Harbaugh at Michigan, I bet Jed's like, yep, and that's why I got rid of you. And that's why I was right. And everyone said I was wrong.
Jed had him back, though, right? When they honored those teams.
Oh, please. That was just PR for both of them.
You think they still...
Photo op. You really think they, like, behind closed doors, they were like, man, we were so young and immature back then. I don't know what happened, man. Give me a kiss. Give me a hug. Hey, you, I love you, man. No. I doubt they said a word to each other.
T. Moss says, on MF Hood.
T. Moss.
Can you explain that to me?
On mother freaking hood. Like, you can say, like, you put that on. Like, what do you put that on? Like, I put it on mamas. Put that on.
Okay.
Grant C. Tuss. You know what I'm saying? Put that on my whole hood.
All right. MGM Productions says Randy Gregory just got cut. Should the 49ers sign him, Grant?
Let me check in on Randy Gregory. What's he been doing up for a while?
He signed a huge deal with Denver, and then they just cut him because they want to focus on younger players. So that's not, the most encouraging sign. It's not like Denver's defense has so many good players they could afford to lose people. He's 30 years old. He's
31. He's about to be 31.
2 sacks.
He's about to be 31. Bro, he's got 19 and a half sacks in his career. He has 3 sacks in the last 2 years. He's played freaking 10 games in the last 2 years. I mean, you gave him the minimum if he came for the minimum, but I just feel like he's going to be a guy who ends up on IR quick.
If you're expecting him to come in and get 10 sacks, like, no, you shouldn't do that. If you're saying, hey, we could use another depth piece, I don't hate it. If he's going to play for the minimum, yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
But
it's a Niner move, right? It's a Niner move. Take some kind of washed up guy who had high hopes and say, hey, on this team with these running mates and Chris Kasarik, maybe, but not for a lot of money. Randy Gregory. The most he's ever had in his best year ever was a 6-sack season in 2021 for Dallas. He had 6 sacks in 12. He's never played more than 14 games in a season. Guy's been hurt all the time. He's going to be 31. Like,
yep.
Sure, give it a shot. Whatever.
Hurt guys get hurt.
Hurt guys get hurt. And he's older now.
Right. As you age, that just gets worse and worse and worse. And Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, hurt guys get hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo missed last week because he had a concussion. Like, that's what happens.
It's so interesting to watch the Raiders to be like, this is so shocking. Jimmy's a winner. What's going on? Like, man, you really should have been paying attention the last 5 years. We could have told you this. So predictable.
It's wild to see when he drops back and those feet start moving because that first read's not out. I know what's gonna happen, and it's so weird to watch it now and not like I can't get mad at it anymore because I don't need to because it's not on my team. It's just like, damn, it's just like it was.
Yeah, you remember it, like the anxiety that you can feel dripping off him as the play extends. That no longer, I mean, Brock never exudes that type of anxiety. I think that's one of the best things about Brock is how confident he is at all times.
Even like against Dallas, right? He may be under a ton of pressure. I don't have this feeling that he's just going to self-destruct. I have so many memories in my head of Jimmy Garoppolo not throwing the ball away, forcing it over the middle into coverage, or fumbling the ball in the backfield when he eludes 1 sack and he's trying to get away from pass rushers, which everybody in the world knows he can't do, and he throws the ball backwards. It becomes a fumble. Like, there is none of that with Brock. Even if he's going to be under pressure, he's not going to make a bad play worse.
He hasn't so far. I mean, I think what's so impressive about Brock beyond, a lot of things are, but like just how freaking prepared he was and he is. Like, he is on it. He knows the offense. He looks like he's 35 years old in terms of like a feel for what to do on the field. Like, and the confidence of a much older man. Like, he just has so many. He looks like he's 12, but his whole game is like he's 35. And he moves so well. Like, he's incredible. They lucked out so much with this guy. They drafted him after Tariq Castro Fields. He was a throwaway draft pick. They were like, should we sign him as an undrafted free agent or take him with the last pick? Let's take him with the last pick, because if you sign him as an undrafted free agent, he might be even more expensive and some of the team might get him. And we don't want to give him that much money. So let's just and see what happens. Like, they're so lucky. And yeah, they get credit for, seeing something. But at the same time, like, they didn't see that much. This is all new to everyone.
Yeah. They would have drafted him way earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the greatest surprise ever for the 49ers. It's wonderful.
It's unbelievable, but it's so comforting as a 49er. Like, every game that passes, again, I've said I'm not going to be naming Brock Purdy a franchise quarterback because I like to see him play for 2 years. But it is every game that passes, it is more and more comforting that, my God, this is not just a fluke thing. This is not Nick Mullins. This is not this kind of Shanahan propping up somebody that doesn't do anything beyond the system. Clearly, there's something there beyond the system.
Let's compare Mullins and Brock real quick. Mullins knew the system very well, had a nice arm, and put up good numbers. But he did not have Brock's leadership, confidence, poise, and he didn't have his mobility. Like, none of that.
Yeah,
none of that.
Sorry. Before we get to the super chat, there was a really interesting thing on the broadcast. Brock apparently told the Fox broadcast crew that one of the things he does and did was he studied his teammates' reactions when they weren't getting the ball. He studied them in film, on film during the game, and he studied like how they came into work, their personality, their demeanor when they weren't getting the ball, coming in after a week where, somebody else went nuts. And he said basically nobody cares. Like, he saw no ego, and that kind of freed him up a little bit. Like, he didn't feel as much pressure to have to force the ball to Debo or Kittle or whoever, because everybody seemed cool with everything that was going on. And for a 23-year-old kid to do that to me was pretty damn surprising.
Yeah, I mean, you can't praise Brock enough for how mature beyond his years he is. Like, a lot of people are immature. Like, this guy is really, 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 really mature. And it goes a long way at quarterback. I mean, you really have to carry yourself like you're a 40-year-old CEO and be above all the trappings of fame and fortune. And he seems to be so far. I mean, he's a humble. I mean, I'm not saying he's humble, but he lives with roommates. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't dress ostentatiously. He's not on social media. Like, he really does carry himself like a dude who's 40 years old at 23. It's hard to find. I mean, most times you bring in a guy like, let's say, Trey Lance. I don't know how mature or immature he is, but you can see how he dressed. You can see his presence on social media, and you can see him, at parties and stuff. It seemed like he had some growing up to do that Brock didn't have to do. And maybe that's why Brock hit the ground running. One of the reasons why Brock hit the ground running and Trey didn't. I don't know. But I do know that teams are looking for that extra mature quarterback at 23. Like, how many people even exist like that in the world?
Yeah,
let alone in the football world.
Right. He's definitely an old soul for sure. Fonzie Gonzalez says, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo still thinks Kyle's plays suck, man? If anybody remembers that last year.
Man, someone needs to ask him that. Someone needs to ask him that.
They're pretty good.
Yup.
Did you... Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you that I noticed from Brock in the post-game presser after last game, he said it multiple times. The fact that he mentioned it more than once made a bell go off in my head. He said, everybody was really buttoned up this weekend on the details. Everybody. He specifically said that, and he mentioned it in more than one answer about how this week everybody was buttoned up. I just can't help but, was he talking about somebody specific? Was there somebody that wasn't buttoned up in previous weeks? And if so, who was it?
Well, that's a good question, right? He has to be, because he like Ayuk is grinding for that big come up, that big payday. Maybe there's a lot of guys on this team who've been paid, and it's early in the year. And the week before was a Thursday game, and they had a very ambitious game plan, as they talked about. They installed a lot in a very little amount of time, and the first half was really sloppy, really bad. And Brock took most of the blame for that. Now, you threw a couple of passes should have been picked. Brock, it was the worst half of football we've seen from Brock, but then he turned it around. Maybe from his perspective, it's like, we were just off as an offense entirely. because some of you guys weren't as locked into the game plan as you should have been. I mean, maybe that's what he said.
I'm reading into it. It's just like the fact that he mentioned it twice, just, clearly it was something he wanted to articulate in the post-game press conference. Andrew says, not counting injuries, is the early season success sustainable into the postseason? This is the discussion you have when your team is undefeated, right? Is it better if they lose a game? How long can they keep this up? I hate that. I hate when the 49ers eventually do lose in the regular season, someone's going to say this was a good thing. Losses are never good. I hate that. But are they quote unquote peaking too soon, Grant?
No. I mean, that's I can't. We've all been saying they need to start fast. So now they start fast. You can't turn around and be like, hey, you started too fast. You should have lost one of those games just to say that you did. My only quibble, I think most people's only quibble so far with how the Niners are winning is just like a little too much CMC. Like if this were a recipe and they gave you like the soup and it came out and be like, it's good, but it's a little too much CMC, man. It's freaking October. Like, I don't want that much CMC in my soup until it's January. Like, this. Okay, this is seasonal. Can I have a little less CMC and a little bit more anything else? Switch it up.
I do want to point this out, though, because, again, to go back to like JT O'Sullivan pointed something out, too. Like, I think we assume that every time CMC touches the ball, the play was designed for him, that's where it was supposed to go, that he was the first read, right? And they're on the running plays, yeah, it's obvious. But like a lot of the passing plays, he's not necessarily the first read or the second read, but either it's covered or Brock is checking it down to him because he's such a friggin' safety blanket that he ends up getting the touch. So then I feel like, and afterwards people are like, Kyle's getting Christian McCaffrey too many touches. It's like, well, that wasn't the game plan, but that's how it worked out.
Right. Like that might just be where Brock wants to go with the ball. Like he seems to really trust McCaffrey and Ayuk. And there was one play that JTO broke down where it was like, man, Kittle seems clearly the number one option here for various reasons that he goes through, and he runs a dig over the middle and he's open and he wants the ball. You can see his frustration, and Purdy just goes straight to his check down the left, which is McCaffrey, who catches it and gains about what Kittle would have gained. Maybe Kittle would have got more. I don't know. But like he ends up getting to the point where Kittle was. And Kittle sort of claps his hands, and JTO sort of wonders, what's that about? Like, and to me, I mean, Breeze played like that. Breeze would quickly throw the ball down to Reggie Bush or Darren Sproles or Alvin Kamara. Like, no one really second-guessed him when he did that stuff all the freaking time. That's how Brock wants to play. He did it all the time, man, and got praised for it. Drew Brees.
He did throw for like 5,000 yards a season.
It's true, though. He did.
Wilson says, Arizona ain't Philadelphia, but the schemes are the same. Is that a good warm-up? Yeah, Jonathan Gannon was the D coordinator in Philly last year. Now, obviously, he's head coach of the Cards. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't
But
hurt,
I think Kyle would tell you, like, we thought we were going to dice them up anyway. And but guys always think that. There was a video of Jonathan Gannon before the NFC Championship game in his car yelling to some Eagle fans, we're going to gut them, talking about the 49ers. So like Jonathan Gannon thought they were going to have success. Every coach always thinks they're going to have success, playing against another team.
True. But like what they did or didn't do against Josh Dobbs doesn't bode well for the next time they face Jalen Hurts. Like Josh Dobbs got whatever he wanted. Josh Dobbs had way more success than I would expect a quarterback of his pedigree would have against the Niners. And I think I don't think Dak's going to do as well. For whatever reason, Dak just seems scared about the Niners.
They're in his head. The Niners are in Dak's head. I posted on our YouTube channel the short of Dak being asked what was the feeling after that playoff game. And he talks about how, you're trying to piss me off. You pissed me off. Thanks for that. Jerk. It's clear that he knows they're going to have to beat the 49ers. He's lost 2 straight weeks. The games ended how they ended. I think if it happens, especially if the Niners can get an early turnover on Sunday, I think Dak's going to get in his head again. It's going to be quicksand.
I agree, man. I think Dak is just at this point where he's made so much money in the league, and he's, had such a gruesome injury where he sort of was like staring at the end of his career, that I think kind of like Jimmy, he's now in survival mode. And I don't like quarterbacks who are in survival mode. Like you can feel the anxiety on them. Like once the play extends. Like, you don't really want the smoke. Like, you don't really want to run around. Like, you want to get the ball and get out of your hands quick. And that's not how Brock's playing. I understand why certain players play that way, but it's like, it's a dangerous game. You got to play with some reckless abandon and confidence that I don't see from Dak anymore. He doesn't strike me as a mobile quarterback. He strikes me as a stationary pocket passer who's okay.
He started as a mobile quarterback, but you're right. Especially the injury, he has
slow now.
And he's definitely not more mobile than Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs kind of surprised me. Like, I was like, damn, he can move a little bit. So we'll see how
even Dobbs isn't even that fast. Like Dak, but Dobbs, compared to Dak, is freaking Lamar.
So we'll see how it goes. I cannot wait. I will be in Levi's for the game. The first freaking 49ers game for me, first NFL game for me. It's going to be so much fun. I'm just geeking out about it already. Obviously, I know you'll be there, Graham. Hopefully I can bump into you when I'm there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there 3 hours early and I'll be leaving 3 hours after. So we will see each other.
There you go. Like and subscribe to the Gold Standard YouTube channel. I'm not promising that. Like and subscribe to the Grant Cohn YouTube channel. Rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network as well. What do you got going on the rest of the day, sir?
I'm going down to Santa Clara like nowish, and Kai will talk and locker room be open, get a feel for where the Niners are at. And then I'll come home, and at 6 o'clock, I got Niners After Dark with Jesse Naylor. So tune in.
There you go, everybody. Have a good rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk to you next week.